Hello. Creakers, chapter 2. Chapter 2, the goodbye note. The children all looked at Lucy, waiting to be told what they should do next, and wondering if she had any more cereal. "Oh, I wish I had an answer for you all," Lucy said apologetically. "And more cereal, but I'm afraid I've no idea what to do. And you've eaten all the snacks I've got." A bunch of little kids started crying. Some of the older kids cried too. "They asked me not to write that in this book, but I'm going to anyway, just so you know how bad it was. Wouldn't you cry if there was no more cereal left? Especially on the day your mum or dad went missing." "Think, Lucy, think," Lucy thought to herself. "Oh, I'm trying to think, but you keep talking," Lucy thought back. Her mind was quiet for a moment, but all she could think of was how much she wished they taught you at school what to do if you ever woke up and discovered that your mum or dad had disappeared. That'd be far more useful than the 6 times table. "That's it!" Lucy shouted suddenly, making half the room jump. "What is it?" replied Norman as he unpacked a camping stove from his satchel and started preparing a full English breakfast. "School, of course," Lucy cried. Everyone looked at her as she'd lost the plot. "We need to go to school," she repeated. "First you want to watch the news, now you want to go to school. What sort of kid are you?" Ella asked, slipping on her heart-shaped sunglasses even though we were inside, like some sort of Whiffington celebrity. "The kind who wants to find out what's going on and get our parents back. We've tried the police, we've tried the television, there's only one place left. School," said Lucy. The crowd of watching children blinked in unison. No one really wanted to go to school, but once again, Lucy had a point. "Right, I'm off. Who's coming with me?" Lucy said hopefully. There was a very unenthusiastic mumble from the other kids. "Yeah, all right, suppose so. If we have to. You sure there's no more cereal?" "But my eggs aren't poached yet," said Norman, looking at his stopwatch. Lucy ignored them all, climbed over their heads, and disappeared out of the room. After a few minutes later, she bounded back in, wearing her school uniform, looking ready for a normal school day. "What are you wearing that for?" scoffed Ella, peeping over her shades. "If the teachers are at school, and I can't sharpen my dressing gown and expect them to take me seriously," Lucy said. She felt her cheeks flushing hot with embarrassment as the room stared at her, but Lucy wasn't the sort of kid who skipped school, nor did she turn up to class wearing her nightwear. She liked lessons and learning. "A kid who wants to be smart is already a smart kid," Lucy said. "My dad told me that once." With that, Lucy picked up a school bag, flung it over her shoulder, and bounced out of her front door, pretending not to give a hoot about the other children. She began marching up the street towards Whiffington School, along the road that was usually full of cars. As it was now empty, she decided she'd walk down the middle of the road. It was an eerie sensation. She walked past Old Man Carvey's butcher's shop, closed. She walked past Whiffington Library, closed. She walked past Scrummy McScrutely's Sweets and Stuff, closed, closed, closed. Whiffington was a ghost town. Suddenly, Lucy heard footsteps behind her. She whipped round, and to her surprise, she saw the crowd of children from her living room following her down the middle of the street. More children were following them, others were jogging up on the pavement, and kids had started filing out of their houses. "There she is," Lucy heard the children whisper. "The girl who wants to go to school. She knows what to do. She's the one in charge." "In charge?" Lucy thought. "Why on earth am I in charge?" Before she could question it, the bunch of kids closest to her started nudging her along, forcing her to keep going to lead them all to the school. "What the jiggins?" Lucy said. "Hang on just a tick." And at that, the children stopped. "First of all, I am not in charge," Lucy said. The children stood still, waiting to hear a second of all. "Second of all?" Lucy hadn't thought of a second of all yet. Second of all, we're already late, so we better get a move on." She licked her hand, slipped her fringe over to one side, and marched on towards the school with a new army of children still in their pyjamas and slippers following closely behind. Some of the little ones even dragging their favourite Teddy along for the adventure. Lucy suddenly felt a sense of achievement. They were taking control. Things were about to get better. Or so she thought. The muffled sound of fluffy slippers stomping over the pavement filled the air as they walked towards the school. Surely there would be a grown-up there who could help. When they arrived at the large iron gates of Whiffington School, Lucy stopped dead in her tracks, causing everyone to bump into each other behind her. "Oh, I'm really sorry that you followed me here, but the school gates are locked," Lucy said, lifting up the big metal padlock so that everyone could see. Then she peered through the bars of the gates, looking for any sign of life inside. The windows of the school were dark and cold. No grown-ups were in today. Lucy gulped as hundreds of faces stared disappointingly at her. "So what do we do now?" a little voice cried out. "Oh, I don't know," replied Lucy, feeling awful that she'd let everyone down. "Oh, if only I had a pin. It's Norman. I've already had a pin. I've got my lockpicking badge, you know, said Norman proudly, pointing at it. Where have all the grown-ups gone? Ella whined. Oh, I don't know either, said Lucy. I believe they may have gone due east, said Norman, checking his compass against the position of the sun. Why is this happening? The children cried. I don't know, Lucy yelled, feeling a lump rise in her throat. I don't know what's happening, why it's happening, where the grown-ups have gone, or when they're coming back. I just woke up like everyone else and found my mum was missing. That's all. I don't know the answers. I'm just a kid like you. Everyone let out a long, disappointed sigh. The younger kids hugged their teddy bears as their bottom lips started trembling. They had all hoped that Lucy would be like one of those super smart kids they'd all seen in the movies. You know, those movies where things go wrong and somehow there's always one kid who knows how to sort it all out. What they didn't realise was that Lucy Dungston definitely was one of those kids. She just didn't know it yet. You might as well go home and wait there. It's probably the safest thing to do, Lucy said. Slowly the children started to leave. They hung their heads and dragged their feet in the dirt as they wandered back through the empty streets to their empty houses. Lucy rested her head on the cold gate. No mum, no police, no teachers, no cereal. This is bad, she thought. She was just about to start trudging home herself when a gust of wind blew past her face, causing her to turn away. It whooshed over the playground towards the front door of the school. Sometimes the wind gusts in just the right place, at just the right time, blowing you in the right direction. That's when Lucy saw it, flapping in the breeze like a hand waving at her. It was a piece of paper pinned to the front door of the school. Her heart stopped. Wait! She cried, and all the other children stopped in their tracks and turned back. Look! She added, pointing at the piece of paper on the door. Without thinking, Lucy started climbing over the top of the iron gates, and just as her fingers gripped the top, her foot slipped through the gap between the metal bars. She managed to cling on tight with her hands, but her feet dangled uselessly behind her, swinging this way and that, unable to find a foothold. Everyone gasped. Then all of a sudden, Norman did the strangest thing. He ran over to Lucy and crouched down underneath her on all fours, like some sort of dog. What are you doing? Lucy strained as she gripped the top of the gate. Someone needs to get on my back, Norman said, so quietly that hardly anyone heard him. Someone get on his back! Ella blasted. The kids suddenly realised what Norman was trying to do, make a human pyramid. Quickly, two older girls from the hockey team crouched on the floor next to him. A couple more kids climbed on their backs. Finally, the tips of Lucy's shoes brushed against someone's bottom, and she could step on them, completing the pyramid. Thanks, Lucy said. She swung her legs over the gate, dropped down into the empty playground, and ran towards a small piece of paper that was pinned to the door. She reached up, plucked out the pin, and took the paper down. Her hands shook with nerves as she flipped it over, inspecting it. It was a letter, and judging by the writing on the front, it was meant for them. As she looked more closely at the dirty brown writing, she began to worry about what this letter might say. Something about the word on the front suddenly seemed frightening. Children. Perhaps it was the way it glistened in the sunlight, not in a nice way, but in a horrid, sticky sort of way. Pass me the pin, Norman said, stretching his open hand through the gate. Lucy handed it to him, and he set to work, picking the lock. After a few seconds of fiddly finger work, Norman had the school gates open so that Lucy could rejoin the rest of the children. Told you, he said to Ella with a brace-revealing grin as he proudly rubbed his lock-picking badge. Read it then, Lucy, cried Ella. With a trembling hand, Lucy straightened the paper and took a deep breath. What does it say? Norman asked, pulling a pair of reading glasses out of his scout uniform pocket. In the same dirty brown writing was this. Dear children, we have gone away forever. Sorry. Have fun. From the grown-ups. P.S. Don't worry about cleaning up after yourselves. Everyone was silent. The grown-ups had gone away. Forever. The children were alone. No grown-ups to watch over them. No grown-ups to tell them what to do. No grown-ups to stop them doing whatever they wanted. Lucy nervously lowered the letter as the crowd of children burst into celebration, cheering and high-fiving. It was their town now. I've got a very bad feeling about this, Lucy said to herself. Me too, said Norman, who Lucy hadn't noticed was standing beside her, reading the letter over her shoulder. This is the best day ever, cried Ella's voice from deep within the joyous crowd. You see, that chapter wasn't scary, was it? Imagine a world where there are no grown-ups telling you, don't eat 12 chocolate bars, and don't sit so close to telly, and don't climb out of the window of that 4-story building. Just imagine that. What would you get up to if there were no grown-ups around? Ooh, this will make a good chapter. Let's see what Lucy did. We'll find out tomorrow in chapter 3. Helpful. Hope everyone's keeping safe and well, and we shall see you when we see you. Take care.